At Thanksgiving, my daughter-in-law sneered, "How's it feel to be the man everyone hates?" I set down my glass, smiled, and said, "How's it feel to know you're homeless starting today?" The room froze, her cruelty exposed, my patience shattered. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The photo frame caught the streetlight as I lifted the trash lid. Corner of silver sticking out between garbage bags, enough to stop me cold on that October evening. I pulled it free, then another, then a whole stack. Wedding photos. Some torn clean through, others with cracked glass, spider webbing across faces I'd memorized 40 years ago. Lottie had thrown away 30 years like garbage. I stood in my Scottsdale driveway, holding pieces of my first marriage, my late wife's smile frozen behind broken glass. This wasn't carelessness. The photos had been in the spare bedroom closet, top shelf, behind boxes. Someone climbed up there, pulled them down, decided they belonged in the trash. I carried them inside. The living room Lottie had redecorated last month stared back. All whites and grays, everything soft and modern. The painting I'd hung of the Phoenix skyline, gone. The bookshelf I'd built from salvaged firehouse oak, replaced. Even the coffee table where Ethan used to do homework had vanished, swapped for glass that looked like it might shatter if you breathe wrong. I walked to my bedroom, the only space in this house still holding pieces of who I was. 5 years ago, when Ethan's wife died in that car accident, I'd wanted to help. Give him and Lottie, his new bride, a fresh start. So I signed over the deed to this house, bought with firefighters' pay and 32 years of overtime. Kept lifetime residence rights. It was in the papers. But I never thought I'd need to defend those rights, not from my own son. I wanted to help them start their life. Instead, I ended mine. Next morning, Lottie was at the kitchen counter when I came in for breakfast. She watched me pull eggs from the refrigerator, lips pressed thin. "Maybe you should eat less, Otis." She stirred her coffee with deliberate slowness. "At your age, metabolism slows down. You don't burn calories like you used to." Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. Didn't look up. Didn't say a word. Just let her comment hang there like smoke from a fire I was supposed to pretend I couldn't smell. I cracked 3 eggs into the pan anyway. 32 years cooking breakfast for firehouse crews of 20. And I was supposed to take dietary advice from someone whose idea of cooking was reheating takeout. "Just trying to help," she added, voice dripping with something that wasn't concern. I ate standing at the counter, left my plate in the sink, walked back to my room without a word. 3 days later, I needed groceries. Safeway on Shea Boulevard was quiet that afternoon. I was comparing coffee prices when I heard my name. "Otis, how's retirement treating you?" Marcus Robertson stood there with a shopping basket, same bright smile he'd had at Station 7. He'd left the department 5 years before I did, moved into property appraisal. "Marcus, good to see you. You look," he paused, "you look like you're carrying weight that isn't yours to carry." The comment landed harder than it should have. Marcus had always been the observant one, noticing when someone's gear was off, or their head wasn't in the game. "Everything's fine, just adjusting." Adjusting to what? "You earned your peace, man. 32 years, you should be fishing or traveling." He set his basket down, gave me full attention. "What's really going on?" I almost told him. Almost let truth spill out right there between coffee and cereal. But old habits die hard. Keep your problems internal. Handle your own fires. Maybe something needs to change. I just don't know what yet. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then squeezed my shoulder. "You were the best captain I ever worked under. Smart, fair, didn't take anyone's nonsense. Don't forget that version of yourself, Otis. He's still in there." We said our goodbyes. I finished shopping. But his words followed me home, echoing as I unloaded groceries into a refrigerator Lottie had reorganized last week without asking. That evening, she cornered me in the dining room. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. "We're doing things differently this year, modern, not like the old ways." I was thinking I'd make the turkey like I always do. Got my mother's recipe for, "Maybe let people who actually cook make decisions, Otis." She smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "I'm sure you have other contributions you can make." Other contributions, like staying out of the way, disappearing into my room like a ghost who didn't know he was dead. Ethan appeared in the doorway, keys in hand. "I'm heading to the gym." He left before I could respond. before he could see his father standing there, swallowing words that tasted like ash. Late that night, I sat on my bed with the rescued photographs spread across the comforter. One held my attention, my first wife laughing, me in dress uniform, little Ethan balanced on my hip. He couldn't have been more than 3. We'd just bought this house. Everything felt possible then. They took the house I gave them. They're taking my dignity. What's left? I stood, walked to my closet, pulled out the file box from the top shelf. Tax documents, insurance papers, and beneath them, the deed transfer papers from 5 years ago. I'd skimmed them when I signed, trusting my lawyer, trusting Ethan, trusting that blood meant something. My finger traced down the legal language until I found it. Section 7, Paragraph 3. Lifetime residence rights. Irrevocable except in cases of gross ingratitude or documented abuse by the residing party. Gross ingratitude. I read it 3 times, pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, took a clear photo of that section, saved it to a folder titled Documents. Something clicked in my mind, a shift I couldn't quite name yet, but it settled into my bones like muscle memory from 32 years of walking into burning buildings. You don't rush into fire. You assess, you prepare. You wait for the exact right moment to act. The papers went back into the box, back onto the shelf. I looked at the wedding photos one more time, placed them carefully in my nightstand drawer. Outside my window, Scottsdale glittered under November stars. Inside this house that used to be mine, I stood perfectly still and thought about Marcus's words. About the captain I used to be, the man who didn't take anyone's nonsense. He was still in there, and he was done being quiet. The papers confirmed what I remembered: lifetime residence rights, revocation clause for gross ingratitude. Legal terms I'd skimmed past 5 years ago suddenly mattered. I spent the next few days reading those documents methodically, the way I'd studied fire codes. Knowledge was preparation. Preparation was power. By the Monday before Thanksgiving, I'd memorized every relevant clause. That's when Lottie made her announcement. We're having guests for Thanksgiving. She leaned against the counter with her coffee mug, already dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly retirement check. My friend Lula is coming. She just went through a divorce, needs company. Ethan nodded from the table. That's nice of us. Nice of us. As if he'd made the decision. As if I'd been consulted at all. Lula's bringing her daughter Simone, so there'll be 5 of us. I'll handle the menu. She waved her hand vaguely in my direction. You can just be yourself, I guess. Be yourself. Translation: stay out of the way and don't embarrass us. Sure, whatever works. I watched her face, looking for any sign she understood what she was doing. Inviting witnesses to Thanksgiving, creating an audience. But she just smiled that thin smile and went back to her phone. Perfect. Wednesday, I made the grocery run. Loaded the cart with everything for a traditional Thanksgiving. 23-pound turkey, russet potatoes, fresh cranberries, ingredients for my mother's cornbread stuffing. At checkout, the cashier made small talk about holiday plans. Big family dinner, I said. Sounds wonderful. Must be nice having everyone together. It'll be memorable, one way or another. The cashier laughed. I didn't. Back home, I unloaded groceries while Lottie examined my purchases like she was inspecting spoiled meat. You bought a turkey? I was going to order something pre-cooked from Whole Foods. I'll handle the turkey. Been doing it for 40 years. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to reconsider. Maybe she realized arguing over turkey made her look petty. Or maybe she just didn't care enough to fight about it. Thursday morning, the day before Thanksgiving, I was washing dishes when Lottie walked by and stopped. Otis, you're not wearing that shirt for Thanksgiving, right? She gestured at my flannel like it was covered in stains. It wasn't. Try to look presentable. Lula hasn't seen you in a while. Lula had never seen me. We'd never met. But pointing that out would have been arguing, and I wasn't interested in arguing. I was interested in watching, noting, building my case one small indignity at a time. I'll find something appropriate. Thanks. She actually sounded relieved, like I'd agreed to do her a favor instead of just existing in my own house without offending her sensibilities. That afternoon, I sat in my recliner reading the newspaper. Ethan walked by my open door, saw me sitting there. Hey, Dad. I looked up. For a second, I thought he might actually come in, sit down, talk to me like he used to. You need something? No, just saying hey. He lingered another moment, then kept walking. Down the hallway, I heard Lottie call his name, heard his footsteps speed up toward her voice. Evening came. I was in the kitchen microwaving leftovers when I heard Lottie's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, not trying very hard to keep quiet. No, it'll be fine. He won't cause problems. He never does. Pause. Laughter. Honestly, Lula, I think he's clinging to this house because he's got nothing else. Pathetic, really. I stood there with my meal cooling on the counter. Through the doorway I could see her pacing, phone pressed to her ear. She had no idea I was standing there. No idea I could hear every word. Simone will love it, though. The house is gorgeous since we redid everything. Getting rid of all that old man aesthetic really opened up the space. More laughter. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, see you tomorrow around 4. Can't wait. She hung up. Walked right past the kitchen without glancing in. Didn't see me standing in the shadows. Didn't know I'd heard her truth. The contempt she carried, but usually dressed up in passive-aggressive comments. Now I'd heard it naked and clear. Pathetic. Clinging. Old man aesthetic. I carried my food to my room, closed the door, sat on my bed. The wedding photos in my nightstand seemed to stare through the wood. I pulled out the deed papers again. Read Section 7, Paragraph 3. One more time. Gross ingratitude. Documented abuse. The words felt different now, heavier with purpose. My phone sat on the nightstand. I picked it up, opened the voice memo app, pressed record. November 27th. One day before Thanksgiving. Lottie just told her friend Lula that I'm pathetic and clinging to this house because I have nothing else. She said getting rid of my aesthetic opened up the space. This is the same house I signed over to them 5 years ago, when Ethan needed help. I stopped recording, saved the file, labeled it with the date. Then I set my alarm for 5 in the morning. Turkey needed to go in early. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. I was up before the alarm, moving through the dark kitchen with practiced efficiency. Turkey went into the oven at 5:30. Potatoes peeled by 6. Cornbread mixed, and in the pan by 6:45. I moved through the recipes like muscle memory, each step precise, each measurement exact. Lottie appeared around 9, already dressed, makeup perfect. She watched me work without speaking. Smells good. Try not to dry it out. Even compliments carried barbs. It'll be perfect. Not defensive, just stating fact. Ethan came down at 10, poured coffee, asked if I needed help. Lottie answered before I could. He's fine. Come look at the table settings I ordered. They disappeared into the dining room. I heard their voices, light and easy, planning where people would sit. Nobody asked where I'd be sitting. Nobody seemed to consider I'd want to say. I checked the turkey. Golden brown skin, internal temperature right on target. The kitchen smelled like every Thanksgiving from my childhood. My mother's recipes coming together the way they always had. Outside this kitchen, everything had changed. But in here, for these few hours, I was still the man who'd fed crews of hungry firefighters. Still, the man who knew exactly what he was doing. By noon, the house shifted into performance mode. Lottie wiped surfaces already clean. Ethan vacuumed the living room for the 3rd time. They moved around me like I was furniture, occasionally offering tight smiles, but no actual conversation. I finished the last of the sides, green beans with almonds, roasted Brussels sprouts, sweet potato casserole, and began setting them on the counter to cool. Turkey would come out in 30 minutes. Guests were arriving at 4. 6 hours from now, Lula and her daughter would sit at my table in my house and watch Lottie treat me like something she'd tolerated long enough. 6 hours from now, they'd be witnesses. I washed my hands, dried them on a towel, looked out the window over the sink. The desert stretched out beyond our neighborhood, all browns and muted greens under pale blue sky. Beautiful and harsh at the same time, unforgiving to those who didn't respect it. Something my first captain at Station 7 used to say came back to me. Fire doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to your actions. I turned from the window, checked the turkey one more time, began arranging serving dishes. Behind me, I heard Lottie and Ethan laughing about something in the other room. Easy, careless laughter from people who had no idea what dinner might bring. I didn't know exactly what would happen either, but I was ready for it. Whatever it was, whatever line got crossed next. The timer on the oven beeped. I pulled the turkey out. Perfect, golden, exactly as it should be. Set it on the counter to rest. My guests would arrive soon, my witnesses. And then we'd see what Thanksgiving really meant in this house. The doorbell rang at exactly 4 o'clock. I was in the kitchen, making final adjustments to the Brussels sprouts, when I heard Lottie's footsteps rush to the door. Her voice carried through the house, too bright, too eager. "Lula, you look amazing!" Air kisses, laughter, the shuffle of people entering, coats being taken, exclamations about how gorgeous the house looked. I stayed in the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel, giving them their moment. "Brad, Jennifer, come in, come in." More voices. I hadn't known Brad and Jennifer were coming. 2 more witnesses to whatever Lottie had planned. I walked into the living room. Lula stood by the new white sofa, mid-30s, expensively dressed, confident smile. Brad and Jennifer, younger couple, looked around with appropriate admiration for the redecorated space. Lottie turned, saw me, and her smile shifted into something sharp. "And this is Otis." Pause. "Thank you, Otis, for letting us use your kitchen in our house." Emphasis on our house. The guests' laughter came a beat too late, uncertain. They sensed the edge but didn't acknowledge it. "My pleasure," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." I didn't correct her, just noted the claim of possession, the public declaration. First shot fired. We moved to the dining room. The table I'd set that morning looked perfect. White plates, polished silver, autumn centerpiece. Lottie accepted compliments with gracious nods, as if she'd done the work herself. The seating told its own story. Lottie at the head of the table, Ethan to her right. Me at the opposite end, physically distanced. Guests arranged on the sides, Lula and Brad on one side, Jennifer on the other. An empty chair beside me emphasized my isolation. I brought out the turkey on its platter. 23 pounds of golden perfection. Set it before me at the far end and began carving. The knife was sharp. My hands were steady. "Looks perfect," Brad said, watching me work. "You've done this before." "Otis has lots of time for cooking now," Lottie said before I could respond. Retirement. The word came out like unemployment, like I was filling empty days instead of having earned rest after 3 decades of walking into burning buildings. I carved the turkey, passed plates down the table. Everyone served themselves from the dishes I'd prepared. The meal began with small talk. Jennifer asked polite questions about the neighborhood. Lula praised the cranberry sauce. Then Jennifer turned to me. "Lottie mentioned you were a firefighter. That must have been rewarding work." 32 years, I said. "Started in 1988, Station 7 on McDowell Road." "Did you have any memorable rescues?" I felt myself warming to the memory. "In 1995, we got a call about an apartment fire near downtown. 4th floor, fully involved when we arrived. Family of 4 trapped." "Otis!" Lottie's voice cut through like a blade. "Nobody wants to hear stories from 30 years ago. We're trying to have a modern conversation." Silence around the table. Forks stopped moving. Brad cleared his throat. "Actually, it sounds interesting." "Trust me," Lottie said, firm. "We've heard them all." Ethan stared at his plate, said nothing. Didn't even look up. I set down my fork, picked up my water glass, took a drink. Second shot. Public silencing. Noted. The conversation shifted to Lottie's online boutique business. She came alive, talking about social media marketing, Gen Z shopping habits, TikTok trends. Her hands moved as she spoke, wine sloshing slightly in her glass. "You're so ahead of the curve," Lula said, leaning in. "That's real innovation." "Well, some of us adapt to change." Lottie glanced at me. "Others cling to the past." Brad mentioned something about retirement planning. He and Jennifer were in their 30s, already thinking ahead. "Otis, you're what, 65 now?" Lottie asked. "That's the age people usually downsize, right?" 64. Close enough. Point stands. Lula jumped in, helpful. "My parents moved to a senior community at 65. They love it, said they're not getting in anyone's way anymore." Getting in anyone's way. The emphasis was clear. Jennifer looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Ethan refilled his wine glass for the 3rd time, still silent. They were building a narrative, making my presence here seem unreasonable, unnatural, making me the problem. "This house is perfect for a young family," Lula said, looking around. 3 bedrooms, right?" "Yes," Lottie said. "Though really we only have 2 bedrooms available. One is occupied, meaning my room, the one I slept in the house I'd given them. Oh, you're planning to expand the family? Eventually, when we have the space. Lottie's smile was thin. When things change. Direct implication. I was blocking their life plans, standing in the way of their future children. Brad trying to be helpful. Retirees often find smaller places easier to manage anyway. Less upkeep, you know? Piling on, though maybe he didn't realize it. I cut another piece of turkey, chewed slowly. Every word was being documented in my mind, every witness noted. The conversation drifted to finances. The wine was flowing freely now, loosening tongues. Lula asked Ethan about his work at the car dealership. It's good, commission-based, so it varies month to month. Translation: unstable income. The reason they needed my house in the first place. At least you have family support, right? Jennifer said. We're independent, Lottie said quickly. We don't rely on anyone. She paused, took another sip of wine. Though I suppose pensions must be nice. Guaranteed income for doing nothing? She looked at me. I earned that pension, I said, quiet, factual. 32 years. Of course you did. Lottie waved her hand. We're just saying some people need to live more, modestly, match their actual contribution to society. Lottie, Ethan finally spoke. What? I'm just making conversation. Dinner plates were being cleared. I stood up, gathering dishes. I'll get dessert. Made pumpkin pie this morning. I walked toward the kitchen. Behind me, voices continued, lower now. They thought I was out of earshot. The kitchen was adjacent to the dining room, separated only by an open archway. I could hear everything. Just a little longer, Lottie's voice. What do you mean? Lula asked. Give it time. He'll realize he doesn't belong here. He'll leave on his own. Lula's laugh was sharp. You really think? He has to. This is our house, our life. He's just leftover from before. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, pie in my hands. Not anger, something colder than that. This wasn't thoughtlessness, it was strategy. They were actively waiting for me to disappear. I walked back in with the pie, set it on the table, expression neutral. That looks good, Lottie said. Try not to let it get soggy. Still criticizing. Even the dessert. I cut slices, served everyone. Returned to my seat at the far end of the table. The meal was perfect, turkey moist. Sides seasoned exactly right. Everything I'd planned for. Everything I'd paid for. In my house, at my table. Feeding people who wanted me gone. Lottie reached for her wine glass, her fourth of the evening. I watched her hand shake slightly as she lifted it. She drank. Set the glass down harder than necessary. The base clinked against the plate beneath it. You know what? Lottie said, her words slightly looser now. Wine softened. We never talk about the real issue here. Ethan shifted in his chair. Maybe we should... The utility bills, she continued, ignoring him. 3 months behind. 3 months, Otis. I looked up from my pie. You told me you were handling the bills. With what money? Your contribution barely covers groceries. My contribution, I said slowly, is living in a house I signed over to your husband. That was the agreement. I pay for my food. You handle the house expenses. The house expenses? She laughed, sharp and brittle. You mean the mortgage we don't have because you gave us the house? The taxes we pay? The insurance? The maintenance? Her voice rose. You act like you're doing us some favor by existing here. Brad and Jennifer looked at each other. Lula watched, wine glass halfway to her lips. I gave you this house, I said. Each word measured. 5 years ago, when Ethan's wife died, when he needed help, I kept residence rights because this was my home. Kept residence rights, Lottie repeated mockingly. You mean you kept control? You can't let go. Lottie, stop. Ethan's voice was weak, not a command, a request. Why should I stop? We're all adults here. She looked at the guests, seeking allies. Right? We can speak honestly. Nobody responded. She turned back to me, stood up, started pacing behind her chair. You're holding on to this house like it's still yours, living here like you're still relevant, but you're not. You're just... She gestured with her wine glass. You're just taking up space. I'm living in my bedroom, I said, calm, staying out of your way, cooking my own meals, paying my share. Your bedroom, she laughed again, wild. You mean the room we need for a nursery, the room that makes this a 2-bedroom house instead of 3, the room that represents everything we can't do because you're here. Ethan stood up. That's enough. Is it? Lottie whirled on him. Is it enough? Because I've been patient, Ethan. Patient for 5 years, waiting for him to understand that we're trying to build a life, but he just keeps existing here, in our space, taking up our air. This was my father's house, Ethan said, but his voice had no strength behind it. Was. Exactly. Was. Lottie turned back to me. Her face was flushed from wine or rage or both. You gave it away. You don't get to haunt it like some... She stopped, searching for words. Some what? I asked quietly. Some lonely old man who has nowhere else to go. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of silence spread across the table. Jennifer's fork clattered against her plate. Brad looked at the doorway like he was calculating escape routes. Lula's eyes were wide. I'm not lonely, I said. I'm not old, and I have exactly where I belong, here, in the house I bought, in the house I gave to my son with the explicit agreement that I could live here for the rest of my life. Agreements change, Lottie said. Situations change. People change. She leaned forward, hands on the back of her chair. You're living in the past, Otis, in your old stories, your old glory days, your old marriage. Everything about you is old. Lottie, please. Ethan tried again. What? What am I supposed to say? That it's fine? That it's normal for a 64-year-old man to live with his son and daughter-in-law? That we should just keep tiptoeing around him, pretending this is working? It was working, I said, until you decided it wasn't. Oh, I decided? Her voice hit a new pitch. I decided to be uncomfortable in my own home. I decided to feel like a guest. I decided to watch you exist here, day after day, reminding me that this house isn't really ours. The house is legally yours, I said, factual, no emotion. My name isn't on the deed anymore. I simply retained the right to live here. That was the agreement we all signed. Retain the right, she mimicked. You retain control. That's what you did. You gave us the house but kept the power. I kept a home. You kept a throne. She slammed her hand on the table. Dishes rattled. Wine splashed. You sit here judging us, making us feel like children in the house you so graciously gave us. Do you know how that feels? I know how it feels, I said quietly. To give away everything and still be told I'm taking too much. Lottie stared at me. Her chest heaved. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, more dangerous. Do you know what Ethan said when we met, when I asked about you? She paused. He said his father was a hero, a firefighter, someone who saved people. I waited. But you know what I see? A man who can't save himself, can't save his own relevance, can't accept that his time is over. My time isn't over, isn't it? She leaned closer. When was the last time someone needed you, Otis? Really needed you? When was the last time you mattered to anyone? The table was perfectly silent. Even the guests had stopped pretending to eat. Ethan stood frozen, halfway between sitting and standing, his face pale. Lottie straightened, looked around the table at her audience, then back at me. Do you even think Ethan loves you anymore? The question hung in the air like smoke, like the kind that meant structure was failing, walls about to come down. Ethan didn't speak. I looked at him, my son. The boy I'd raised alone after his mother died, the man I'd given this house to when he was grieving, the man who'd stood silent through every insult Lottie had thrown at me for 5 years. He looked at his plate, not at me, not at her, at his plate. That silence was louder than any answer. I turned back to Lottie. She was watching me, waiting for tears maybe, for anger, for me to break. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, wasn't friendly or forgiving. It was something else entirely, something that started in my chest, where the cold certainty lived and spread across my face like ice forming on a window. Lottie's expression changed, flickered, uncertainty crossing her flushed features. What? She said. What's that look? I didn't answer, just kept smiling as I stood up from my chair at the far end of the table, the end where they'd placed me like an afterthought. Kept smiling as I picked up my water glass and took a slow drink. Lottie took a step back. Otis? Ethan's voice finally found some strength, though it came out uncertain. I set down my glass, looked at each person at the table, Brad and Jennifer, frozen in social horror. Lula, no longer laughing. Ethan, pale and confused. Lottie, her confidence cracking. Then I opened my mouth to speak. The smile stayed. I let the silence stretch another few seconds. Let them wonder what it meant. Let Lottie's question hang in the air between us like something toxic. "I don't know, Lottie," I said finally, voice calm, measured. "But I can tell you something I do know." I paused. The room was perfectly still. Even the sound of breathing seemed to have stopped. "I know how it feels to realize that starting today you're homeless." Complete silence. Then Brad let out a nervous laugh, uncertain. He thought it was a comeback, a clever retort to her insult. Lottie's face flickered with confusion. "What?" "You heard me." The smile was gone now, just cold statement of fact. Ethan stood up slowly, hands on the table. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I turned to my son. 5 years ago, I gave you this house. You remember?" He nodded, still uncertain where this was going. But there were conditions in the deed. I kept lifetime residence rights. I looked back at Lottie. "There's another clause. Arizona law allows gift revocation in cases of gross ingratitude from the recipient." The legal terms landed like stones in still water. Lula leaned forward. "What does that mean?" I didn't look away from Lottie. "It means I can take the house back." Lottie laughed. It came out shrill, desperate. "You're bluffing." "I'm not." Ethan's voice went tight. "You can't just... This is our home. It's my house, always has been, legally. I gave you the gift. Tonight, you showed me exactly how much that gift meant to you." I turned back to Lottie. "How I should live more modestly. How I take up space. How I cling to things because I have nothing else." Quoting her own words, watching her face pale. "And finally, you asked how it feels to be hated by everyone. That's gross ingratitude. That's grounds for revocation under Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 12-2-451. You can't do this." Lottie's voice had lost its edge. "We have rights. You have 60 days. Arizona law. After I file the official notice tomorrow, you have 60 days to find somewhere else to live." "You're insane." She was screaming now, whine and rage mixing in her voice. "This is because I asked one question? This is because of 5 years of disrespect. Tonight was just the final proof, and you provided witnesses." I gestured toward the guests. "Thank you for inviting them, by the way. Their statements will be useful." Brad stood up fast, chair scraping the floor. "We should go." Jennifer was already gathering her purse, not meeting anyone's eyes. Lula looked at Lottie, then at the door, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. "Yes," I said. "You should all go. Dinner's over." They moved quickly, mumbled awkward goodbyes that nobody answered. The front door opened and closed. Car engines started in the driveway. We stood there, 3 of us. The remains of Thanksgiving dinner spread across the table I'd set that morning. "Dad, please." Ethan's voice cracked. "Let's talk about this. You're upset. I understand. I'm not upset. I'm done. This is my home, my life. You can't just... I gave you a home. You let her treat me like I was nothing." I looked at him directly. "You said nothing, did nothing. 5 years of watching it happen. 5 years of choosing her comfort over my dignity." I know I should have, but please, not like this." "Exactly like this." Lottie's rage had broken into something rawer. Tears streamed down her face. "We'll fight this. You can't take our house." "It's not your house. It never was. And yes, I can." She sobbed. Ethan tried to calm her, tried to reason with me, tried to find some angle that would make this not real. "I'm going to my room," I said. "I have calls to make in the morning." I walked away mid-sentence. Behind me, Ethan called out, "Dad, wait." I didn't turn around, walked down the hallway to my bedroom, closed the door. For the first time in 5 years, I locked it. Through the door, I could hear Lottie's crying, Ethan's voice trying to soothe her, trying to make sense of what just happened. I sat on the edge of my bed, looked at my hands. They were steady. I should have felt guilty, should have felt doubt, should have felt something other than what I felt. Relief, pure, clean relief. For the first time in 5 years, I'd stopped being small, stopped accepting, stopped disappearing into the margins of a life I'd built with my own hands. Night passed. I slept better than I had in months. No dreams. No waking up at 3 in the morning with the weight of indignity pressing on my chest. Just sleep. Real sleep. Morning light came through my window. I got up, made coffee in the small machine I kept on my dresser, something I'd bought 2 years ago when using the kitchen started feeling like trespassing. 7:30. I opened my laptop, searched, real estate attorney, Scottsdale, Arizona. Reviews loaded. I scrolled through them methodically, looking for someone experienced, someone who understood property law, someone who wouldn't waste my time questioning whether I was sure about this. Richard Hunt, family law specialist, 4.8 stars, over 200 reviews, office on Scottsdale Road. Phrases jumped out: thorough, responsive, fought for my rights, didn't back down. His website said office hours started at 9. I could hear voices in the other part of the house, Lottie and Ethan, muffled through walls. The tone was argument, not conversation. At 9:01, I called the number. A receptionist answered, professional voice. Hunt and Associates, how may I help you? I'd like to schedule a consultation, today, if possible. Of course. May I ask what this is regarding? I looked at the bedroom door, at the lock I'd turned, at the space I'd reclaimed. It's regarding revoking a property gift on grounds of ingratitude. Richard Hunt's office was downtown, glass and steel, 13th floor, with views of Camelback Mountain. He was late 50s, black like me, with silver at his temples and a handshake that felt like assessment. Mr. Shaw, have a seat. I sat. He had the deed papers I'd emailed that morning spread across his desk. Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 122451, he said, tapping the document. Gift revocation for gross ingratitude. It's not used often, but you have a solid foundation here. He looked up. Tell me about Thanksgiving. I told him. Every insult, every witness, the question about whether my son still loved me. Ethan's silence. Hunt took notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You'll need those witnesses to testify, the friends who were there. They'll remember. Your son and daughter-in-law will hire an attorney. They'll argue the gift was absolute, that conditions can't be imposed retroactively, that you're acting out of spite. Let them argue. Hunt smiled slightly. You've thought about this. 32 years as a firefighter teaches you to plan before you act. Good. We'll file the petition Monday. They'll have 60 days from official notice. Court hearing will likely be mid-January. He paused. This will get ugly, Mr. Shaw. Family law always does. But based on what you've told me and the witnesses present, you have a strong case. How strong? 70-30 in your favor. Maybe better, depending on their attorney's strategy. I stood, shook his hand. File it Monday. The following week crawled by. The house became a war zone of silence. Lottie and Ethan stayed in their bedroom or left entirely. We didn't speak, didn't make eye contact. I cooked my meals, they cooked theirs. We existed in the same space like opposing magnets. By mid-December, Lottie had hired an attorney, Elena Torres, her parents' money, funding the $8,500 retainer. Hunt told me over the phone. She's good, he said, but she's working with weaker material. That same week, I discovered Lottie's social media campaign. A friend from the firehouse sent me a screenshot. Lottie had posted on 3 platforms, painting herself as the victim. Cruel father-in-law stealing our home, gave us house then changed his mind. Heartless elder taking back gift out of spite. The comments were predictable. Outrage, sympathy, calls for family counseling. I didn't respond, didn't engage, just forwarded everything to Hunt. Document it, he said, but don't react publicly. Let her words speak for themselves. I did more than document. I started going through 5 years of financial records, looking for anything useful. Found something interesting in year 3. Lottie had started a small online boutique. Never mentioned it, never reported the income. I called an accountant friend. Casual inquiry about online business taxes. If she's making sales and not reporting, that's tax evasion, he said. Small scale, probably. But the IRS doesn't care about scale. I thought about that. Thought about justice and fairness, and people who took without giving. Then I went to the library, used their public computer, created a temporary email address, filed an anonymous tip with the IRS, included screenshots of Lottie's business page, sale records I'd found in her email account. She'd left her laptop open one night. and approximate income calculations. The IRS doesn't move fast, but they move, and they don't forget. Christmas came and went without celebration. Ethan tried once to talk to me, cornered me in a grocery store parking lot 3 days after. "Dad, please, can we sit down, talk this through?" "What's there to talk through? You're my father. I love you. I made mistakes, I know, but taking our home, it's too much. I gave you a home. You made it uninhabitable for me." She was frustrated. She meant every word. "You know it. I know it." I looked at him. "And you let her say them for 5 years. You chose her comfort over my dignity every single time. I know I should have, but please, not like this." "Exactly like this." Lottie's rage had broken into something raw. Tears streamed down her face. "We'll fight this. You can't take our house." "It's not your house. It never was. And yes, I can." She sobbed. Ethan tried to calm her, tried to reason with me, tried to find some angle that would make this not real. "I'm going to my room," I said. "I have calls to make in the morning." I walked away mid-sentence. Behind me, Ethan called out, "Dad, wait." I didn't turn around, walked down the hallway to my bedroom, closed the door. For the first time in 5 years, I locked it. Through the door, I could hear Lottie's crying, Ethan's voice trying to soothe her, trying to make sense of what just happened. I sat on the edge of my bed, looked at my hands. They were steady. I should have felt guilty, should have felt doubt, should have felt something other than what I felt. Relief. Pure, clean relief. For the first time in 5 years, I'd stopped being small, stopped accepting, stopped disappearing into the margins of a life I'd built with my own hands. Night passed. I slept better than I had in months. No dreams, no waking up at 3 in the morning with the weight of indignity pressing on my chest. Just sleep. Real sleep. Morning light came through my window. I got up, made coffee in the small machine I kept on my dresser, something I'd bought 2 years ago when using the kitchen started feeling like trespassing. 7:30. I opened my laptop, searched. Real estate attorney, Scottsdale, Arizona. Reviews loaded. I scrolled through them methodically, looking for someone experienced, someone who understood property law, someone who wouldn't waste my time questioning whether I was sure about this. Richard Hunt, family law specialist, 4.8 stars, over 200 reviews, office on Scottsdale Road. Phrases jumped out: thorough, responsive, fought for my rights, didn't back down. His website said office hours started at 9. I could hear voices in the other part of the house, Lottie and Ethan, muffled through walls. The tone was argument, not conversation. At 9:01, I called the number. A receptionist answered, professional voice. "Hunt and Associates, how may I help you?" "I'd like to schedule a consultation. Today, if possible." "Of course. May I ask what this is regarding?" I looked at the bedroom door, at the lock I'd turned, at the space I'd reclaimed. "It's regarding revoking a property gift on grounds of ingratitude." Richard Hunt's office was downtown, glass and steel, 13th floor, with views of Camelback Mountain. He was late 50s, black like me, with silver at his temples and a handshake that felt like assessment. "Mr. Shaw, have a seat." I sat. He had the deed papers I'd emailed that morning spread across his desk. "Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 122451, he said, tapping the document. "Gift revocation for gross ingratitude. It's not used often, but you have a solid foundation here." He looked up. "Tell me about Thanksgiving," I told him. Every insult, every witness. The question about whether my son still loved me. Ethan's silence. Hunt took notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You'll need those witnesses to testify, the friends who were there. They'll remember. Your son and daughter-in-law will hire an attorney. They'll argue the gift was absolute, that conditions can't be imposed retroactively, that you're acting out of spite. Let them argue." Hunt smiled slightly. "You've thought about this. 32 years as a firefighter teaches you to plan before you act." "Good. We'll file the petition Monday. They'll have 60 days from official notice. Court hearing will likely be mid-January." He paused. "This will get ugly, Mr. Shaw. Family law always does. But based on what you've told me and the witnesses present, you have a strong case." "How strong?" 70-30 in your favor, maybe better, depending on their attorney's strategy. I stood, shook his hand. File it Monday. The following week crawled by. The house became a war zone of silence. Lottie and Ethan stayed in their bedroom or left entirely. We didn't speak, didn't make eye contact. I cooked my meals, they cooked theirs. We existed in the same space like opposing magnets. By mid-December, Lottie had hired an attorney, Elena Torres, her parents' money, funding the $8,500 retainer. Hunt told me over the phone. She's good, he said, but she's working with weaker material. That same week, I discovered Lottie's social media campaign. A friend from the firehouse sent me a screenshot. Lottie had posted on 3 platforms, painting herself as the victim. Cruel father-in-law stealing our home, gave us house then changed his mind, heartless elder taking back gift out of spite. The comments were predictable: outrage, sympathy, calls for family counseling. I didn't respond, didn't engage, just forwarded everything to Hunt. Document it, he said, but don't react publicly. Let her words speak for themselves. I did more than document. I started going through 5 years of financial records, looking for anything useful. Found something interesting in year 3. Lottie had started a small online boutique, never mentioned it, never reported the income. I called an accountant friend, casual inquiry about online business taxes. If she's making sales and not reporting, that's tax evasion, he said. Small scale, probably. But the IRS doesn't care about scale. I thought about that. Thought about justice and fairness and people who took without giving. Then I went to the library, used their public computer, created a temporary email address, filed an anonymous tip with the IRS, included screenshots of Lottie's business page, sale records I'd found in her email account. She'd left her laptop open one night, and approximate income calculations. The IRS doesn't move fast, but they move and they don't forget. Christmas came and went without celebration. Ethan tried once to talk to me, cornered me in a grocery store parking lot 3 days after. Dad, please, can we sit down, talk this through? What's there to talk through? You're my father. I love you. I made mistakes, I know, but this, taking our home, it's too much. I gave you a home. You made it uninhabitable for me. Lottie she was frustrated. She meant every word. You know it. I know it. I looked at him. And you let her say them for 5 years. You chose her comfort over my dignity every single time. I'm choosing her now too. She's my wife. Then live with your choice. I walked away, got in my car, drove home, still my home, for now, still legally theirs, but not for long. By early January, both attorneys had filed their briefs. Hunt walked me through Torres's argument. The gift was made freely, without coercion, 5 years ago. No take-back clause exists in Arizona law. Otis Shaw is acting from spite, not legitimate grievance. The events of Thanksgiving were a single night of harsh words, not grounds for destroying a family. What's our response? I asked. That gross ingratitude isn't about a single night. It's about a pattern, 5 years of systematic disrespect. Thanksgiving was the culmination, not the cause. And we have witnesses. When's the hearing? January 15th, Judge Fisk. She's fair, doesn't suffer theatrics. Present your facts clearly, you'll be fine. The weeks before the hearing felt like waiting for a fire call. That anticipation. Knowing you'd have to act, but not knowing exactly what you'd face when you got there. I prepared. Gathered documents, made timeline of insults and incidents, found old emails, text messages, anything that showed the pattern Hunt talked about. Found the recordings I'd made, the voice memos from November, Lottie calling me pathetic on the phone, her breathing comment, the old man aesthetic remark. Hunt listened to them in his office. Arizona's a one-party consent state, he said. These are admissible. They're also damning. Late one night, I sat in my bedroom going through everything one more time. The wedding photos I'd rescued from the trash, the deed papers with their revocation clause, the witness list. Brad and Jennifer had agreed to testify, uncomfortable but truthful. Even Lula, surprisingly, said she'd tell what she saw. Marcus called that evening. I'd told him everything a week before. You doing okay? He asked. Yeah, I'm good. You don't sound good, you sound different. I'm different than I was. That's not always a bad thing. He paused. You were the best captain I knew because you never rushed into fire. You assessed. You prepared. You waited for the right moment. That's what I'm doing now. I know, just when this is over, remember you're not just fighting for a house. What am I fighting for? Your right to exist without apologizing for it. The hearing was in 2 days. January 13th. I laid out my clothes for court, pressed my dress shirt, polished my shoes, everything ready, everything prepared. In 48 hours, a judge would decide who had the right to this house, who had honored the gift, and who had violated it. I stood at my bedroom window, looking out at the desert night. Somewhere out there, Lottie and Ethan were preparing too, building their case, crafting their defense, telling their story about the cruel father who changed his mind. But I had something they didn't. I had the truth. I had the witnesses. I had the documents, and I had nothing left to lose. The first hearing had been procedural, documents filed, positions stated. Judge Morrison scheduled the full hearing for March 15th. January gave way to February. The house felt smaller every day, the silence louder. Early February morning, I was making coffee when I heard the mail slot clang, footsteps in the hallway, then Lottie's voice, sharp and rising. What is this? What's wrong? Ethan's voice thick with sleep. The IRS, they're auditing my business. A pause, then louder. This is him. This has to be him. I stayed in the kitchen, listening. Footsteps coming fast. Lottie stormed in, waving an official envelope. Did you do this? Did you report me? I took a sip of coffee. I don't know what you're talking about. They say I owe $11,000, plus penalties. Her hand shook. This is you. If you owe taxes, that's between you and the government. You reported me. I know you did. Can you prove that? She stared at me. Couldn't. Wouldn't ever be able to. She was right, of course, but she'd never prove it. Few days later, Ethan caught me outside. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, the weight of choosing wrong pressing visible on his face. Did you know about her business, the taxes? I knew she had a business. I assumed she was running it properly. She says it's a mistake. The accountant messed up. For 2 years, that's not a mistake. That's a choice. Ethan was quiet, processing something he didn't want to accept. Everything's falling apart, he said finally. The house, the taxes, us. Then maybe it's time to make different choices. Like what? Like choosing what's right over what's easy. You mean leave her? I mean stop enabling her. Whatever that looks like for you. She's my wife, and I'm your father. But you picked a side on Thanksgiving. I walked away. Left him standing there with the choice he'd already made, but couldn't admit. Over the following days, I heard them arguing through walls. Saw Ethan sleeping on the couch some mornings. One morning, he approached me before I could leave for my walk. If I left her, would you drop this? The house case? No. Then what's the point? The point is, you'd be doing the right thing for the right reasons, not to gain something. I can't abandon her when everything's going wrong. Even though she brought it on herself. I made vows. So did I. And when your mother died, you were all I had left. I looked at him directly. Look how that turned out. I walked past him, out the door, into the morning air. He wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. Early March, Hunt's office. Preparing for the hearing. We have 3 witnesses willing to testify, Hunt said. Brad and Jennifer Morrison came voluntarily. Lula Holmes resisted, but she's under subpoena now. She'll try to minimize it. Probably, but under oath, she'll have to tell the truth. Hunt looked at his notes. Remember, calm, factual, no emotion. Let the facts speak. That's all I've ever wanted. March 15th arrived cold and clear. I wore my suit, the one I'd bought for formal fire department occasions, still sharp after all these years. Hunt beside me with his organized briefcase. We arrived early. Lottie and Ethan came in with Elena Torres. Lottie wore conservative clothes, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. Attempting sympathy. Maricopa County Superior Court. Wood paneling. Arizona state seal on the wall. Judge Morrison entered, woman in her 50s, reputation for no-nonsense rulings based on evidence, not emotion. This is a petition for revocation of a gift deed based on gross ingratitude. Mr. Hunt, proceed. Hunt presented methodically. the deed with its revocation clause, documentation of the original gift, timeline of events. Then he called Brad Morrison. Brad took the stand, sworn in, testified about Thanksgiving dinner, the comments about my age, my space, my pension. Under oath, his discomfort was clear. She was dismissive of him repeatedly, Brad said. It was uncomfortable to watch. Torres cross-examined. Isn't it normal for families to disagree? This felt different, more personal, more cruel. Next was Lula Holmes. She walked to the stand nervously, glancing at Lottie, sworn in. You were present at the Thanksgiving dinner on November 28th, 2024? Hunt asked. Yes. Did Mrs. Lottie Shaw make disparaging comments about Mr. Otis Shaw that evening? Well, families argue. Please answer the question. Did she make disparaging comments? Lula hesitated. Yes. Can you describe them? She recounted the age comments, the space concerns, the pension remarks. Then Hunt leaned forward slightly. What question did Mrs. Shaw ask Mr. Shaw? Lula's voice went quiet. She asked him how it felt to be someone everyone hated. Audible reaction in the courtroom. Someone gasped softly. And how did the room react? Everyone was silent. It was... Lula looked down. It was too far. Torres tried damage control. Weren't there tensions on both sides? I suppose, but no further questions. The damage was done. Loyalty couldn't overcome truth under oath. Jennifer Morrison took the stand next. Brief, but devastating. Hunt asked, in your observation, was Mr. Shaw treated with respect in his own home? No, absolutely not. Did anyone defend him when he was being insulted? No. She looked at Ethan. His son stayed quiet. Ethan stared at his hands. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents, the testimony, the timeline. Finally, she spoke. I've heard testimony establishing a clear pattern of disrespect. The question posed by Mrs. Shaw on November 28th constitutes, in this court's view, gross ingratitude under Arizona revised statutes. Lottie gripped Ethan's hand. Her knuckles went white. However, Arizona law requires fair compensation for improvements made to the property. I'm ordering a property appraisal to determine current market value and document any improvements made during the recipient's tenure. Judge Morrison looked at her calendar. Appraisal to be completed by April 15th. We'll reconvene in May for final determination. The gavel came down. Hunt leaned close. We won the main point. The rest is just math. Days later, the official notice arrived. Hunt delivered it to me personally. Notice of pending eviction, effective July 1st, 2025, pending final court order. I placed copies on the kitchen table, where Ethan and Lottie would see them. Didn't wait for their reaction. Went to my room, closed the door. Through the walls, I heard Lottie's breakdown, crying that sounded like breaking. Ethan trying to calm her, his voice low and defeated. The court believed me. After 5 years of being told I was the problem, someone with authority said I was right. But victory in court didn't mean they'd go quietly. I knew that. The appraisal would come in April. Until then, I had to live with them knowing they'd lost. Early April, Hunt called. Torres filed a counterclaim. They're saying Lottie and Ethan made $75,000 in improvements to the property. $75,000? I almost laughed. The kitchen cabinets were maybe $8,000. The paint job $3,000. What else could they claim? New HVAC system, landscaping, bathroom renovations. We'll see what the appraiser finds. When's the appraisal? Mid-April. I'm recommending Marcus Robertson. He's certified, independent, and he knows you from the fire department, which actually helps because he won't give you favors. He'll be scrupulously fair. Marcus arrived on April 18th. Professional, clipboard, camera. We nodded to each other but didn't speak beyond necessities. He measured rooms, photographed improvements, checked permits, reviewed receipts Lottie provided. I stayed in my bedroom while he worked, heard him moving through the house, opening cabinets, testing fixtures. 3 hours later, he left without ceremony. The report came May 10th. Hunt read it to me over the phone. Total documented improvements, $14,500. Kitchen cabinets, paint, new water heater, and some landscaping. The HVAC system was original to the house. The bathroom renovations were minor fixture replacements, not actual renovations. So they inflated it by $60,000. Desperation makes people creative with math. Hunt paused. Court date is May 20th. Judge will rule on compensation amount. Then the eviction stands. May 20th, same courtroom. Judge Morrison reviewed Marcus's appraisal report. The court finds that legitimate documented improvements total $14,500. Mr. Shaw, you're ordered to compensate the recipients in that amount within 30 days. Upon payment, the eviction order becomes final and enforceable July 1st. Torres tried to argue. Judge Morrison shut it down with a look. Gavel, done. I went to the bank the next morning, withdrew $14,500 in a cashier's check, delivered it to Hunt's office that afternoon. You're not fighting the amount? He asked. It's fair. They did make those improvements. I'm not interested in cheating them. Most people in your position would fight every dollar. I'm not most people. I just want my house back. The check went through Torres to Lottie and Ethan. The final court order came June 15th. Official, legal, binding. I called Sarah Chen, a realtor I'd contacted quietly back in April. The house is legally mine again as of today. Let's list it. She came that evening with comps and market analysis. In this market, with this location, I'd recommend $515,000. Listed at $505,000. I want it sold fast. You'll have offers within a week. She was right. 3 days later, an offer came in at asking price. Cash buyer, 30-day close. I accepted immediately. Mid-June, maybe 2 weeks before the eviction date, I was in my room packing books when I heard a soft knock on my door. Otis? Lottie's voice. Quiet. Different. I opened the door. She stood there in jeans and an old sweater, no makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked exhausted. Can we talk? About what? About all of this. About fixing things. Her voice cracked. Please, I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. But we're family. Can't we? No. You haven't even heard what I want to say. I don't need to. I looked at her directly. You had 5 years to say something different. 5 years to treat me like family. You chose differently every single day. I was stressed. The business, the money, trying to make things work. So you took it out on me. Made me small so you could feel big. And when I finally stood up for myself, you tried to destroy me. I shook my head. That's not stress. That's character. People change. I can change. You're only changing because you lost. That's not change. That's desperation. Her face shifted. Sadness disappeared. Something harder took its place. You really are heartless, aren't you? Your own son is about to be homeless, and you don't care. My son chose this. Every day he chose this. He could have stopped you. Could have defended me. Could have drawn a line. I stepped back toward my door. He didn't. So, yes, he's facing consequences. So are you. We have nowhere to go. You have family, Lottie's parents in Tempe, according to the court papers your lawyer filed. You'll figure it out. After everything we did for you, everything you did for me, the words came out sharp. I gave you a house. You gave me contempt. I think we're done here. I closed the door, locked it, heard her standing there for a long moment before her footsteps retreated. The next week I packed systematically, my bedroom first. Clothes, books, the wedding photos I'd rescued from the trash, the deed papers that had started all this. Everything that mattered fit into boxes I stacked along one wall. Late June, Hunt called with the closing date. July 8th, your buyer wants to move quickly. That works. I'll be out July 1st. Where are you going? Found an apartment near Old Town. 2 bedrooms, balcony, quiet. It's enough. How does it feel? I thought about that. Like I can breathe again. July 1st was coming. The house was sold. The case was won. Ethan and Lottie were packing their own boxes, searching for apartments, making arrangements with her parents. I sat in my room, surrounded by packed boxes, and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Peace. Pure, simple peace. I'd fought for my dignity. I'd won. And soon, I'd walk out of this house not as the man being erased, but as the man who'd reclaimed himself. July 1st came and went. They were still there. Technically legal, they had until the 30th when the house sale closed. But the clock was ticking and I could hear them scramble. Early July, I was in my room when I heard Lottie on the phone with a landlord. Her voice carried frustration I'd never heard before. What do you mean we don't qualify? We have income. She listened. Fine, thank you anyway. She hung up, cursed under her breath. Ethan's voice, tired. What about the place on McDowell? They want first month, last month, and a $3,000 deposit. We don't have that. My new job doesn't start until next week, and it's less money than before. I know that. You think I don't know that? I kept packing books, kept listening. They were learning what I'd known for 5 years. The world doesn't owe you comfort. Days later, another conversation filtered through the walls. The landlord ran our credit, Ethan said. We're denied. Because of what? Your business, the unpaid bills, the IRS debt. It's all on there. That's not fair. That's not fair? Ethan's voice had an edge I'd never heard him use with her. You didn't pay taxes for 2 years. What did you think would happen? First sign of him blaming her directly. Don't you dare. Your father did this. He reported me. Maybe, or maybe you just broke the law. Silence. Then Lottie, voice dangerous. So now you're on his side? There are no sides. There's just what happened. Mid-July, they finally found something. I heard them discussing it in the kitchen. It's a studio, Ethan said. 400 square feet. It's awful. It's in a terrible neighborhood. It's what we can afford. $1,650 a month. They'll take us. $1,650 for a closet. We had a whole house. We had his house. There's a difference. I can't believe you're, what, stating facts? We're broke, Lottie. The IRS wants almost $19,000. I lost my job. You lost yours. This is where we are. A studio for $1,650. In my house, they'd paid $0. Anne still complained. Late July, I heard Lottie on the phone with her mother, her voice pleading. Mom, please, just a loan, $10,000. We'll pay you back. Pause. I know about the taxes, but... Another pause. So you're just going to let us be homeless? Your own daughter? Her voice broke. Fine, fine, don't help. See if I ever speak to you again. She slammed the phone down, started crying. Ethan tried to comfort her. Maybe if you explained, they don't care, nobody cares, we're alone in this. We did this to ourselves. Shut up, just shut up. Ethan had lost his car sales job in June. Too many absences for court dates. I'd overheard him on the phone with a friend, explaining the new job. Parts warehouse, $38,000 a year. It was less than half what he'd been making, but he needed work, from car sales to warehouse parts, from house to studio. Everything shrinking. The week before move-out, their fighting reached a peak. Voices loud enough I couldn't avoid hearing even with my door closed. This is your fault, Lottie screamed. All of it. My fault? You're the one who... You couldn't stand up to him, couldn't protect us. What kind of man lets his father destroy his family? You destroyed it, on Thanksgiving, with that question. One question. I asked one question. You asked if he knew what it felt like to be hated, in front of guests, in his own house. Oh, his house. Always his house. You never made it ours. Because it wasn't ours. He gave it to us, and you treated him like garbage. I want a divorce. Stunned silence. Then Ethan. What? You heard me. I can't do this anymore. You, your father, all of it. Fine, maybe that's best. Door slamming, footsteps, more crying. July 25th, 5 days before closing. Evening, a knock on my bedroom door. I opened it. Ethan stood there, exhausted, defeated, 38 years old but looking 50. Can I come in? For a minute. He entered, stood awkwardly near the window. I'm leaving her. Lottie, it's over. I heard. I should have done it sooner. I should have defended you. Yes, you should have. I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I was weak. I let her control everything. You let her control you. There's a difference. Can you forgive me? Is there any way to fix this? Fix what? The house is sold. You're moving out in 5 days. I mean us. Our relationship. I looked at my son, saw genuine remorse in his eyes, but also saw 5 years too late. You made your choice on Thanksgiving when she asked that question, and you said nothing. I know I did. That was the moment. You had one chance to choose me, and you didn't. I was scared of conflict, of her, of standing up. I know, but that doesn't change what happened. So that's it? We're done? You're my son. That doesn't change. But respect, trust, those are gone. Maybe someday. Maybe, but not today. Not this year. Maybe not ever. Tears in his eyes. I really am sorry. I believe you, but sorry doesn't give me back 5 years. He nodded, turned to leave. At the door, he turned back. Where are you going? After this? Somewhere smaller, somewhere that's just mine. I hope you find peace there. I already have. He left. Closed the door quietly behind him. July 28th and 29th. Final packing. I boxed up the last items, photos, books, kitchen things I'd use in my new place. The house mostly empty now, echoing. I walked through the rooms one last time. Living room where Thanksgiving dinner had happened, where the question had been asked. Kitchen where I'd cooked that turkey, heard them through walls talking about waiting for me to disappear. My bedroom where I'd spent 5 years taking refuge. This house had been my home for decades, then my prison, now just a building someone else would love. The moving truck was scheduled for July 30th, same day as the closing. At 9 in the morning, I'd sign papers. By noon, the house would belong to someone else. By evening, I'd be in my new place, the old life ending, the new one waiting. I closed the last box. Tomorrow, this chapter ended, and I was ready. The title company office was quiet. July 30th, 9 in the morning. I sat at a conference table with Sarah Chen and the buyers, young couple, maybe early 30s, excited about their first home. They had no idea what this house meant to me, what it had cost. Papers spread before us. Sarah walked through them systematically. Purchase agreement, disclosures, transfer documents. I signed each one, my signature steady. The cashier's check came last. $505,000 minus Sarah's commission of $15,000 minus closing costs of $8,000. Final amount, $482,000. I'd already calculated the full accounting. Original house value when I gave it to Ethan 5 years ago, $340,000. Compensation. I'd paid them for improvements, $14,500. Legal fees to Hunt, $8,500. Total cost to reclaim my house and dignity, $23,000. Net gain after sale, $134,700. Plus I'd kept my retirement accounts, pension, savings untouched. Total assets now, $616,700. The price of freedom, worth every penny. Congratulations, I said to the young couple as we stood up. It's a good house. You'll be happy there. The woman smiled. We already love it. The neighborhood is perfect. I shook their hands, walked out with the check in my pocket. At the bank, I deposited it, transferred funds to my new mortgage, paid off the remaining balance on my new place in full. A small ranch house in Tempe. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, covered patio, $285,000. Now, completely mine. That afternoon, I'd driven by the old house one last time. A moving truck was in the driveway, Ethan and Lottie loading boxes. I didn't stop, just slowed enough to see them struggling with a couch, her yelling instructions, him looking broken. They were heading to that studio apartment, 400 square feet. The IRS would get their $19,000 eventually, probably garnishing wages, selling what little they owned. Lottie's online boutique had closed. No inventory, no customers, no future. Ethan's divorce filing would come through by September, according to Hunt, who'd heard from Torres. 2 lives in ruins. Not because I'd been cruel, because they'd been cruel first. And consequences have weight. Early August, I learned Ethan had officially filed for divorce. Hunt mentioned it casually over the phone. Torres had called him for some procedural question. Hunt asked if I wanted to know the details. No, I said. It's not my business anymore. Fair enough. How's the new place? Quiet. Exactly what I needed. August 15th. I invited Marcus over for dinner. Hadn't seen him since the appraisal back in April. He arrived at 6 with a bottle of wine and his easy smile. This is nice, he said, looking around. Really nice. Feels like you. That's the point. We ate on the back patio. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, simple. The sun setting over the neighborhood painted everything gold. You hear from Ethan? Marcus asked. No, don't expect to. You okay with that? I thought about it. He's my son. I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt, but I'm okay. That's a tough line to walk. Yeah. I took a drink. When someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. He showed me. For 5 years, every time he stayed silent, he showed me. And you finally believed him. Finally. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, was it worth it? All of it, the lawyers, the court, losing your son. It cost me $23,000 and a relationship that was already broken. It gave me back my self-respect and my freedom. I looked at him. You tell me if that's worth it. I'd say yes. So would I. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun dropped lower. The desert evening cooled. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing, life continuing its normal rhythms. You lonely? Marcus asked. Sometimes, but I'm not disrespected. Not small, not invisible. I'm free. I smiled slightly. Loneliness I can handle. What I couldn't handle was being treated like I didn't matter in my own life. Fair trade then. Yeah, fair trade. Marcus left around 9. I cleaned up, washed dishes, put everything away in my kitchen, in my house, where nobody would tell me I ate too much or breathed too loud or took up too much space. I stood on the back patio one more time before going to bed. The stars were out. The air was cool. The silence was mine. I thought about that Thanksgiving question, how it felt to be someone everyone hated. Now I knew a better question. How did it feel to be free? It felt like this, like standing in my own space, owing nothing to anyone, answering to no one, like sleeping without tension, like cooking breakfast without criticism, like existing without apologizing for it. It felt expensive. It felt lonely sometimes. It felt hard-won. It felt like peace. I'd given up trying to make Ethan understand. Maybe someday he would, maybe not. Either way, I'd done what I needed to do. Stood up, spoke up, took back what was mine. Tomorrow I'd wake up in my house, make my coffee, read my newspaper, live my life on my terms. The old Otis, the one who tolerated disrespect because family was supposed to be forever, was gone. The new Otis knew better, knew that family meant nothing without respect, that love required action, not just words. I'd learned it the hard way, but I'd learned it, and that made all the difference. I went inside, locked my door, in my house, in my life, turned off the lights, and slept like a man with nothing left to prove. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.
잠깐만, 오늘 토요일? 내일 일요일. 내일이 월화수가 설날이죠. 레이님 어서오세요. 맞지? 토, 일 연결돼서 그렇지. 월화수가 설날 맞죠? 엽기 닭볶음탕이요?